Ambassador Chen Wei stood motionless in the vast crystalline amphitheater of the Galactic Council, watching as representatives from 47 species erupted in what could only be described as cosmic laughter. The sound was a cacophony of clicks, chirps, harmonics, and subsonic rumbles that made her teeth ache. High Counselor Thexanar, a towering crustacean whose shell gleamed with bioluminescent patterns, raised one of his forearms for silence. "Ambassador Chen," he said, his voice translated through the neural implant behind her ear. "Surely you jest. Humanity wishes to contribute fishing boats to our defensive fleet?" The laughter resumed, louder this time. Chen had expected this reaction. To beings who commanded vessels the size of small moons, who wielded energy weapons capable of cracking planets, humanity's contribution must have seemed laughably primitive. "With respect, High Counselor," Chen replied, her voice steady despite the weight of countless alien gazes upon her. "These are not fishing boats. We call them trawlers." "Semantics," snorted Commander Vexhai of the Korthani Empire, his serpentine head weaving dismissively. "Your largest vessel measures barely 3 kilometers. Our destroyer-class ships are 50 times that size." Chen nodded politely. "Indeed, Commander, but size isn't everything." The briefing hologram materialized in the center of the amphitheater, displaying the approaching threat that had united 47 species in desperate alliance. The Devourers, a plague of mechanical entities that consumed entire star systems, converting matter into more of their kind. They had already consumed the outer rim, and their advanced scouts were probing the edges of civilized space. "The Devourers will be here in 67 standard days," announced War Prime Gorlak, his metallic voice echoing through his cybernetic translator. "Our combined fleet's number in the hundreds of thousands. Surely even humanity's contribution would be welcome, however modest." More polite laughter. Chen felt a familiar tightness in her chest, the same feeling she'd had as a child when classmates mocked her father's fishing boat, not understanding that it represented 3 generations of engineering refinement, of learning to read the oceans, moods, and work with them rather than against them. "We have prepared 500 vessels," Chen announced. "They will arrive at the designated coordinates in 48 hours. The war began on the 3rd moon of Kelthera 7, a bleak industrial world that served as the Council's final fallback position. Chen stood in the observation deck of the human command ship Benthic Explorer, watching as the first wave of Devourer scouts emerged from hyperspace. The Council's grand fleet was magnificent to behold. Massive dreadnoughts bristling with plasma, cannons, carrier ships that birthed swarms of fighters, fortress-class vessels that were essentially mobile space stations. They engaged the enemy with the thunderous fury of civilized warfare. Beam weapons that could slice through asteroids, missiles that carried antimatter warheads, shields that bent space-time itself. And they were losing. The Devourers adapted. Every strategy, every weapon, every defensive measure, within minutes the enemy had analyzed, absorbed, and countered it. Their black biomechanical forms shifted and evolved in real time, turning each victory into a learning experience. "Human fleet," came the transmission from War Prime Gorlak, his voice tight with desperation. "We need you to fall back. Protect the civilian evacuation routes." Chen exchanged glances with Captain Martinez, a weathered woman whose grandmother had captained tuna boats in the Pacific. "Negative, War Prime. We're moving to intercept." "With fishing boats?" The transmission crackled with disbelief. "Trawlers," Chen corrected gently. The human fleet moved like nothing the galaxy had ever seen. Where other species built their ships for maximum firepower or defensive capability, humans had built theirs for something far more subtle: persistence. The Benthic Explorer and her sister ship slid through the battle like shadows, their hulls dark and unremarkable. They carried no massive weapons, no reality-bending shields. Instead, their holds were filled with humanity's greatest export: patience. "Deploy the nets," Captain Martinez ordered. From each vessel, nearly invisible filaments began to spread, not physical nets but something far more insidious: quantum entanglement mesh, gossamer threads of connected particles that stretched across thousands of kilometers of space. To the devourers, racing forward in their consuming fury, they were undetectable until it was too late. The first devourer strike force hit the nets at 0.7 C. The quantum mesh didn't stop them, couldn't stop them, but it did something else entirely. As each devourer ship passed through the filaments, quantum information was exchanged, copied, transmitted. "Got them," announced Chief Data Analyst Park, her fingers dancing across holographic displays. "Pattern recognition complete. Transmitting to all vessels." Across the human fleet, the same process repeated. Like fishermen who had learned to read the migration patterns of tuna, humanity had learned to read something far more complex, the algorithmic soul of their enemy. The devourers were adaptable, yes, but adaptation required processing time, analysis, integration. In that brief moment between encounter and evolution, they were vulnerable. And humanity had brought 500 ships to cast 500 nets. "Multiple contacts adapting to quantum mesh," reported Martinez. "Switching to configuration. 7. The human vessels began to change. Modular hull sections rotated and reconfigured. What had moments before appeared to be crude fishing boats now revealed their true nature. Shape-shifting trawlers designed not for catching fish, but for catching patterns. Every time the devourers adapted, the human fleet adapted too. But where the enemy needed time to process and integrate new information, humanity's ships had been designed around a different principle entirely: empirical iteration. Each human captain was part of a collective intelligence that spanned the entire fleet. Every adaptation the enemy made was instantly shared, analyzed, and countered across all 500 vessels. It was the same principle that had allowed fishing fleets to track migrating schools across Earth's oceans, scaled up to cosmic proportions. The devourers found themselves caught in something they had never encountered before, a net that learned faster than they could evolve. "Impossible," transmitted War Prime Gorlak as he watched enemy formations begin to falter. "How are you doing this?" Chen smiled, remembering her father's words as they hauled in nets full of silver fish under starlit skies. "The ocean teaches you patience, little one. You don't fight the current. You learn to read it, to move with it, to understand it better than it understands itself." "We're not fighting them, War Prime," she replied. "We're fishing." The battle raged for 18 hours. And for 18 hours the devourers found themselves outmaneuvered, not by superior firepower but by superior understanding. Every adaptation met by counter-adaptation, every evolution matched by revolution. When the last enemy vessel finally fell silent, drifting dead in space, the galaxy held its breath. High Counselor Thexanar's transmission was barely a whisper. "How?" Chen looked out at the debris field that had once been an unstoppable force, then at her own fleet of humble trawlers, their nets now empty but their purpose fulfilled. "Your Excellency," she said quietly, "humanity has been fishing for a very long time. We've learned that the biggest catch often requires the most patience and the most humble tools." In the silence that followed, not a single species laughed. The stars, after all, were still shining.